Greetings, family, and welcome to the African Esquire show on WCC TV. I'm your host, Tierney Cherie. As you just saw, July 21st through 23rd, we're coming down to the wire, really. So if you have not registered yet for the convention, Pan-African Unity or Perish, a call for the abolition of neocolonialism, it's almost coming to that time where it's going to be your last chance to register for the convention. So it's next week, literally. And I wanted to start off with that promo, actually, because this video will be the last one that I do until the conference, basically. So you won't see me until after the convention. So for that, I do just want to encourage you all again, if you want to support, if you want to be a part of this conversation and just hear from a variety of voices about what needs to happen strategically for African people to organize against this system, to fight back against this system, to not be so easily manipulated, to not be the prey of this system. Those are the types of things that we want to explore, the types of things that we want to give you the opportunity to explore and think in depth about, maybe more than we would normally have the opportunity to. So that is my pitch to you, my last pitch to you. Please do register for the convention. It is next week. And you'll also see me on Saturday on the WCC podcast and book club. And that will be actually my final reminder to you all to please register. Today, we're going to talk about a subject that I wrote about on WCC's website, rechargecolonialism.org. The subject really goes to the nexus of a number of things that have been said in the press as of recently. So the title of the article, if you have not seen it, and I'll make sure it's, I link it below after this premieres, but How Africans Resist the New World Order. So I'm just gonna play a very quick video just to kind of set the stage for why people are saying this more now than ever, that basically something else is coming to the world and that African people, we have to be the ones to wake up to what's going on, because as it stands in the current world order, we're obviously on the bottom, we're obviously being manipulated, and we're obviously the victims of a worldwide conspiracy. So as the conspiracy furthers and deepens, we have to talk about what has to happen to save our people from being always the victims and to gain control over our own destinies. So here is some of y'all's president, the United States President Joe Biden. He said something at a business conference or something like that. So I just wanted you to listen for yourself.
We are at an inflection point, I believe, in
I'm actually going to go back because his voice is so low. All right, here we go.
We are at an inflection point, I believe, in the world economy. Not just the world economy, in the world. It occurs every 3 or 4 generations. As one of the top military people said to me in a secure meeting the other day, 60 million people died between 1900 and 1946. And since then, we established a liberal world order, and that hadn't happened in a long while. A lot of people dying, but nowhere near the chaos. And now is a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it. We've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it. So anyway.
So he said this so casually, right? There's going to be a new world order and things like that. I want to go back to the word that he used in the beginning of his statement. Actually, he said there's going to be an inflection point. Quick Google definition of inflection point. It's a point of a curve at which a change in the direction of curvature occurs, or in business, you might say a time of significant change in a situation, a turning point. To give you a visual of what they're talking about when they say inflection point, just to show you this right here. 1 second. So here's a visual of an inflection point. You can see that particularly like this graph right here, you have a point where things have been going one way, but then they just start completely going a different way. This is what they're calling the current world order, that basically saying that it's coming to an end and that we're going to be entering into a new one. Something that might seem insignificant to you in its current scheme of things, because maybe your life hasn't changed a whole lot. I mean, sure, things are a lot more expensive right now. Sure, people are a lot more angst about, the cost of living. Sure, gas is more expensive, but overall, your life is your life. You know, you might still go to the same job, still buy the same things, still go out on the same day, still go on vacations, still go see your family, have family reunions, and you might not be ready to accept that we are at an inflection point. But as history will tell us, the fact that we're not able to accept it, or the fact that we're not able to wrap our mind about it, around it in a particular instance, does not mean that this is not what's happening. And so what we have to be ready for as African people is the fact that every single globalist, every single major entity has been saying the same thing. They're saying that there's going to be a new world order. They're saying that there's going to be a drastic change. They're saying that the old order is done over with. And our concern has to be that if this old order has been done over with, that we're ensuring that we're not going to be, again, the prey of this new order. How can we make sure that we're exercising dominion over our own lives, over our own communities, over our people? And that's going to be up to us, because if we're not willing to have those conversations, then we're leaving it up to them to decide. They've already mapped out our future. We can clearly see they've already mapped out that Africa is going to continue to be exploited, that Africa is going to be brought more in control by the globalist system, that even Africans are going to starve. Let me show you something, a visual actually, while I get ready to hit this article from, what's that newspaper? I think it's Economic Policy. Let me see. Okay, The Economist. I thought Economic. Okay. The Economist. You can see that really they mapped out our future for us. So I'm going to show you this visual right here. So you can see right here, they're saying the coming food catastrophe is something that we've been talking about a lot on this channel. The fact that they are projecting that food catastrophe is coming for us. You can see right here that this is something they've been talking about. They all over, like I said, the globalist newspapers, the globalist magazines, the globalist think tanks, they've been saying the same thing. Zoom in right here though. If you could see that they have faces of skulls on the screen. And we know right now that the big thing that Ukraine and Russia are exporting right now, that they said that we're no longer going to be able to buy the same way in the coming time. We know that it's grain. So literally they're projecting the death of millions of people, and they're putting the information right out there for us to see. But some of us are so wrapped into our day-to-day lives that we really can't even see it. Look at this one too. Like you can see the next coming catastrophe and how we'll all survive it. Look at this one. When the ride ends, what would happen if the market crashed? This reminds me of what we were just talking about, an inflection point. Look at this. This roller coaster going somewhere that people basically don't know what their end will be. That's us right now. And they're putting their messaging out to basically put out predictive programming that it's obvious that something's about to happen. But if you're not alert enough to the messaging, if you're not alert enough to what these people are putting out there, then yeah, we're going to be in a position that it's still going to be us that are going to face things the worst, that are going to experience these famines, experience this economic downturn the worst. And so for that, I decided to write an article more focused on what I think we should be doing to prepare for this new world order, for the thing that is being said repeatedly and repeatedly by the most powerful people in the world, that we're entering into a new world order. We can expect that it's going to be one of globalism. We can expect it's going to be one of scarce resources from certain folk, and a more direct scramble for the things that we have left. You know, they've scrambled for Africa many times in the past, but they're going to be scrambling now for the small things that we thought that we could control as of now. This is what we're seeing. Even if you hear like what's happening with the oil, you know, Russia is sanctioned to an oblivion right now. So the West is looking for somewhere else to get their oil. And what are they saying? Oh, we're looking to Africa, or we're looking to Nigeria. You know, these are resources that we have not really tapped into for the benefit of our own people. I mean, if you ever been to Africa, fuel is expensive. It's more expensive to buy fuel in Africa than a Biden America, despite the fact that fuel is abundant, particularly in certain parts of Africa, particularly like in Nigeria. Like there's places where fuel is abundant, and yet these people will seize it before we even get to develop it amongst ourselves. And so these are the things that we have to keep in mind. The Scramble for Africa will be Scramble 4.0. And if we're not ready and thinking about what needs to happen to protect ourselves, to protect our communities, then we're going to be leaving ourselves very vulnerable. So let's go to the article that I wrote on WCC's channel. And the link, like I said, it's just wechargecolonialism.org, but the link will be down below for you all to look at. So I see that you can see this. So this is the video I just played, Joe Biden. This is a video I played before on his channel of Hillary Clinton and a number of people also discussing the New World Order. I believe this might have been at the New Economic Forum earlier this year. You could watch this. I've played it on this channel before, so I'm not going to play it again, but you should watch this. It's really interesting when you hear how these people are discussing this. And here's a visual. Here we are. Powerful people on every side. How are we going to survive the New World Order? Now, I'm not going to go into all of the things in the beginning. You can read through that yourself, but I'm going to start hitting these points right now. The number one thing that I recommend is food sovereignty. Food sovereignty. I can't emphasize that enough. One of the stories that I've been very historic stories that we don't talk about a lot, but I've been finding very convincing in these times, is the history of the sacking of Rome. And this is not the only time that this happened, but I think it's a good visual for those of us, particularly who are stationed in the West, who might be so comfortable with things the way that they are, who might be so used to the fact that I'm just going to go to my 9 to 5, come home, enjoy my family, just living that way, basically. For those of us who are so used to being inside of that lifestyle where we don't have to think about what we're going to put on our table every single day, we might not really feel like something's drastic's about to happen. And if you study what happened with the sacking of Rome, that's literally how the people felt. You know, people were living their lives. They were dependent on a system. So understand, when we say dependent on a system, to emphasize, all of us are dependent on this system. I mean, I'm assuming, you know, maybe some of you are outliers who've already built self-sufficiency, but most of us are already dependent on this system. What I mean is that if the electric grid in the United States were to go down, if the electric grid in the UK were to go down, if the electric grid in Germany were to go down, I'm speaking to people who live in the West again. You know, for us people who are places where you don't depend so much on the grid, you know, good. You know, we need to start moving in that direction. But if these places were to go down, then what would happen to us? How long would we survive? The electric grid going down means that you can't go to your grocery store. It means that eventually you can't get gas. There's so many things that you are dependent on. And eventually what would happen is that you would starve out. That's literally what happened to the Romans. They were dependent on food being imported into the city of Rome. They were dependent on their basic necessities being taken care of, that they would just have to do whatever, pay whatever bill or whatever, and the things would be there that they expected. They did not put emphasis on farming. They did not put emphasis on growing food. That was, you know, basically the agrarian lifestyle that they left behind. They looked down on people who grew their own food. And if you look at what happened whenever Rome was sacked by the barbarians, essentially the people of Rome starved out. Many of them became cannibals. Many of them died. So this is why we use this as an example, because that is what the West has set up for us, that we're so dependent on a system that when that system cannot continue, when it's not going to be self-sustaining, that system will basically tear us down with it, right? That's why food self-sovereignty is so important. I did put an article, a link to an article I did, and I'm just going to reference it again. It's right here, food shortage or a strategic genocide. You can click this. This goes into detail about the food shortage that's going to happen, that's going to particularly wreck African people throughout the world. Is going to have a devastating effect on us wherever we are. They're saying if you're in the West, it might not be that bad, but I'm not convinced. So this is something that's coming very quickly. And if we don't understand food sovereignty, the ability to grow your own food, the ability to survive just outside of the food sovereignty thing, how are you going to survive if something happens in a winter? and you don't know how to keep yourself warm, what are you going to do? How are you going to have food? These are the questions that we have to ask ourselves and start building towards. And so hopefully we seize this moment. It has not hit that bad just yet. Things have not hit the fan just yet. We have time to strategize. We have time to look in amongst our people in our communities and to think, okay, like, what can we do in the here and now to save ourselves, to save our children? How can we make things better so that we're not scrambling or not basically out of money and can't pay for basic groceries and stuff like that? How do we just handle this now? These are the things that you should think about. I said government accountability. This is particularly in African countries. We are not in a position as it stands, right, to say that we have a number of revolutionary governments that are going to represent the people, are able to represent the people, because a lot of the governments that have revolutionary ideals are also being choked by the West. So because of that, we're kind of put in this position where government accountability, like what I mean by that is actually knowing what's happening in your country. So that, again, this is particularly people will say in the quote unquote global South, actually knowing like what is happening to your land, what is happening to your people, and actually being able to link those things to your actual leaders. So if your president is just casually making deals with foreign nations to ration off the last of the land, that should receive not just pushback, it should receive protest. I was so proud of the people in Ghana who were protesting. I think it's the Ajipa deal, the gold deal, because it's like, hey, Nana Akufo-Addo and the ruling party, what are y'all doing with our gold? You're going to give away our gold to these people, and that's something that belongs to us. When you're no longer in office, this decision that you made to sell off our gold is going to still affect us. You'll be fine, but us will still be poor. So that's the type of accountability we need. You should know what corporations are stationed inside of your country doing certain things. You should know which ones are illegally seizing the mines, or quote unquote legally, but of course, buying things very cheap, who are bribing leaders. You should know those types of things. You should be able to have fact checking on the ground to be able to say, okay, like, you're telling us that this is what's causing our food crisis, but in reality, we see that this company right here that is exploiting the people, these people are really the ones that are to blame. That's going to take a level of accountability, a level of organization among the people, and being knowledgeable about what's going on in your own country. That's something that's going to be very, very important. I said community self-defense because the fact is that as things get crazy, you've seen what happened inside of Sri Lanka, for example. The people have to be able to defend themselves. The thing is that our enemies have guns, our enemies have bombs, our enemies have nuclear weapons, things that we could not necessarily wrap our minds around, they have. And it's not enough for us to just say, well, Africans, you need to build your own. If you know anything about the intelligence, whether it's the Central Intelligence Agency but the different intelligence agencies of the West, you know that that's impossible. If any type of nation actually made an effort to do that, then that would incur the fury of the West, who says that only we can have this type of destructive weapons. I'll give you an example. I didn't realize this. Do you know South Africa at one time had nuclear weapons, and they had to turn those over whenever it became majority Black rule? That was one of the stipulations. I mean, that's crazy to think about, but that happened. So these solutions are not easy, but there are some basic things that you can think about. Basic protections, basic self-defense. And this again happens when you're organizing amongst yourselves. But I say this to say, don't take it for granted that during this time, the police are going to be amped up. The things that are happening, they're going to basically rely on the police state to enforce. Because one thing that you should understand about police brutality, police murders, is that it's always going to be worsened because of the conditions of the people. So really, police are there to basically keep us in line. They're not really there to protect and serve. So if they're there to keep us in line, then the more disgruntled we become, the more threatened they become. And that's when you start seeing different things happen. So that's why community self-defense, I think, is going to be very, very essential. Okay, so this is the last point I just want to make. I've made this point a number of times. Prepare to unplug from social media. I would say gradually, just evaluate where you put social media in your life. This might not bother or pertain to many of you. Many of you might be like, hey, I don't even like go on anything. Like I haven't checked Facebook for ages or blah, blah, blah. So, this might not pertain to you the same. But some of us are literally hooked into this like metaverse or hooked into this digital world. Some of us are so linked into it that we really can't see outside of it. For that, I just want to emphasize that you should really unplug from social media. That's going to be something that is going to be essential at some point. The reason why is that censorship is only getting worse. Censorship is only increasing, and censorship is being done because they're testing the waters. At some point, they're going to cut us off. I've said this a number of times. At some point, they're going to be very hardcore. These are our standards. You can't talk about this. Imperialism, colonialism. You can't talk about that. You can't talk about racism. I mean, they're already doing it in many of our pages. I mean, I could tell you WCC, many of our things we've just gotten more and more hit, on certain pages that we have. So I just want to emphasize to everyone that definitely be ready to unplug, because they're going to unplug for us. The other thing I want to say is be careful when you're on social media about offering up your information. I've said this a number of times. When you're saying certain things in public and you're not thinking that people are watching, please understand they are. When you're inside of these Twitter rooms where you kind of like Clubhouse and whatnot, and you're just saying things, maybe you're getting something off your chest, understand all of these things are being documented. All of these things are being stored. So this is an emphasis to you. Prepare to unplug from social media, because it's coming. I promise you, it's coming to a point where censorship will be so bad that if you depended so much on social media for your followers, for your organizing work, for your connections to your Black community, then that will disappear along with your social media access. And so that's a serious thing to be dependent on. Ultimately, opt for depending on your interactions with your people in person. Let social media be a backup thing and not be a primary thing. So these are my suggestions for how we can prepare. Just a few things. And I would honestly love to see more suggestions. So I would love to see what you think. How do we prepare, honestly, like substantively, like how do we prepare for what's happening? The fact that the globalists are saying that the economy is going to crash and that things are going to be very different. How do we make sure that colonialism does not continue under this new regime of things? Africa is not yet free. So we can tell that this new world order is not going to be so much different than the previous one as far as our conditions, but things are going to be different for sure, because you have a lot of people scrambling to control it, a lot of people scrambling to be the determining factor as far as these different nations, different powers. You see how the US, China, Russia, and NATO, all the NATO countries are basically jostling for who's going to be the controllers of this thing. Meanwhile, none of us are even in those conversations, obviously, because we don't even control our own land. We don't even control our own destiny at this particular point. So that's a serious thing for us to always keep in mind, that we are inside of a very particular position, that we have to do what we can to free our people. Before I go, I do just want to let you all know, I will be on Brother Omawale Africa's channel. Let's see if I can pull it up. Here's a graphic. This Friday, you can check me out on Brother Omawale's channel. We had a really good discussion on a number of things. We all talked about some of the things that we even talked about in this broadcast, but that will be airing Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And I'll also put the link to that inside of the description. So with that, everyone, thank you for joining. I will see you all in the next video.